Good morning, everyone. It's a little bit appropriate that I should bring you the reading this morning, having grown up on a farm in Tasmania where we ran sheep and goats by the hundreds. And I can tell you, as you listen to this reading this morning, it is not a very difficult job to separate sheep from goats, because the goats are so strong-willed that they separate themselves from the sheep. Our reading comes from Matthew 25 verses 31 to 40 and is entitled The Sheep and the Goats. When the Son of Man comes in his glory and all the angels with him, he will sit on his glorious throne. All the nations will be gathered before him, and he will separate the people one from another, as a shepherd separates the sheep from the goats. He will put the sheep on his right and the goats on his left. Then the king will say to those on his right, "Come, you who are blessed by my Father, take your inheritance, the kingdom prepared for you since the creation of the world. For I was hungry and you gave me something to eat. I was thirsty and you gave me something to drink. I was a stranger and you invited me in. I needed clothes and you clothed me. I was sick and you looked after me. I was in prison and you came to visit me." Then the righteous will answer him, "Lord, when did we see you hungry and feed you, or thirsty and give you something to drink? When did we see you a stranger and invite you in, or needing clothes and clothe you? When did we see you sick or in prison and go to visit you?" The king will reply, "Truly I tell you, whatever you did for one of the least of these brothers and sisters of mine, you did for me." This is the word of our Lord.
Thank you everybody for the wonderful invitation to come here to be amongst such lovely people. I felt very welcome and very much accepted. Thank you. People's attitude towards prisoners is absolutely terrible, and it's being reinforced by people that want to be in power, and they're just neglected. Unfortunately, Pete told you about my history, so I can't shock you. But normally when I'm talking to a group of people, somebody says, "Tony, what have you been doing in your life?" And I say, "Well, I've been in and out of prison since the late 60s. And you laughed. They nearly always step back. And so there's an attitude out there, and we grew up with that because, you know, when we were little kids, if you do that again, you'll go to jail. And don't think like that, because that's what criminals do, you know, that sort of thing. And they were black, you know, blackened, terrible people. Can anybody see that? You've always seen this, haven't you? Can you see what's on there? What's on there? A dot. That's very good. Now, who is this woman? Everybody normally says, "Oh, there's a dot on there, Tony." Yes, you're right. But unfortunately, it doesn't matter what you go to prison for. Once you come out of court and you have that dot, and you're going to prison, that's what the dot turns into. And it doesn't go away. And we need to change that as a community. I point to Christ over there, forgiving. And I remembered that coming home from, I was what an impression now. I was originally appointed as a honorary probation and parole officer by the governor. Does that impress you? Good. Yes. And I had many, many cases, including some quite renowned cases, which I was frightened about until I met them. And they're just nice people. And then yes, got my line. Very nice people, and I had these I had a couple of guys on probation, and on the way home from the office at night time I used to go to Calling to see them. The first chap had been a junior bank teller, and one day he was knocking off for lunch and he had no money. So he took $2 out of the till and put in an IOU. And the next teller coming in spotted the IOU, took it to the supervisor, and all of a sudden this guy was arrested, taken to court, found guilty, and he's not in prison, but he carries the black dog, the big one. And so I used to call and see him on the way home from work, once a week. And he had a lovely mother who used to make me afternoon tea. We'd sit there and talk about old times and all that sort of thing, and I'd put a nice report through for this kid. And then I'd move on to the next case, and this chap was rebuilding an old Holden utility, and he needed a radio for the car, or the vehicle. And he looked in the Sunday Times, which is where people used to advertise those days. All the young people of our age will remember that. And he found a radio that would suit his vehicle, and he went out and bought it. And he was followed home by the cops and arrested for purchasing stolen property. And just incredible. I mean, he was quite innocent, but he was found guilty and he was on probation, and the poor man had me as his probation officer. His father happened to be a commercial fisherman, and every week when I called, he gave me a bag of fish to take home. And they were just lovely people, and I told the guy when I got him on probation, I got them shortened. And I told this fellow when he finished his car, one condition, I want to see it when it's finished. And he did. He brought it around to my home, and we just sat in it and looked at all the parts. And he was proud of it, and I was proud of him, proud to know him.
Did you have a radio?
I was going to say, did he have the same radio?
I think he had actually I've forgotten it. I think he had a dasher, just to play a dash. Yes, so that, and there are miles of these people in prison. Yes, there are people that have done some bad things, but they need to be looked at from a psychiatric point of view as well. And just as an aside, if you do any research on Google, you'll find that our prisons have got fantastic rehabilitation programs, education programs, health programs, work programs, all terrific stuff. And reading it, you'd be very impressed. But in actual fact, it's all on paper, and there's very little or nothing there. And in fact, when you go into prison, you're supposed to be assessed so you can do a rehabilitation program. That doesn't happen. Some guys have been there 12 months and they still haven't been assessed. Good reason, they don't have people that can do the assessment. Programs, there are none because they haven't got anybody to run them. If anybody would like to meet me later to see how we can change this, I'll be very look forward to that. So then we move on. Christ just do funny things. I don't know about you guys, but when I wake up in the morning, I'm sure that somebody up says, "Hey, he's awake. What are we going to fix up for him today? How can we pull his leg?" They have the best fun, and many things have happened. Years ago, which wasn't mentioned, and keep that in this room, I was a monk. And as a young monk, I came out of the student house and I moved into the floor where the abbot was. And and I had a very old Spanish monk opposite, who was a very wise man. He gave me a lot of wise information. Anyway, one night about 9 o'clock, I was in bed. It was very hot, and I had shorty pajamas on and a t-shirt. So I'm just, curling up to go to sleep. And there's a knock on the door. So I opened the door, and that was his lordship. Anthony, Mrs. Cooper is sick. You better go down and see her. I said, oh look, I'm only the boy. Why don't you get one of the old ones? Those guys that know what they're doing up there. And he says, no. He said, you've got the keys to everything. Just go down and get your gear and go. So I said, yeah, right. And so I put my habit on over the top of my shorts, put on a pair of thongs, and went down, got a car and got my gear, and away I went. And I got down to this Aboriginal camp, and I'm in a real camp, no buildings, only shelters. And there was this dear lady, very sick. I knew her, and anyway, I was standing over her, comforting her, saying prayers for her, and I felt these things coming up my legs, and I thought, oh my goodness. All I could think of was bullets, because we were standing on bare ground, and so I was a little frightened, but then I thought, oh my God, if they start to bite, I'm going to start jumping around the place, and this poor lady is sick. That's not going to help her. And so I just, in my mind, looked upstairs and said, I'm here under obedience. I'm doing what I think you want me to do. And if those things start biting, you know what I'm like when I get stung. So do you reckon you could do something about it? And you're not going to believe it. Down they came. And they went away, and I just thought, wow. And that's how I've operated ever since, because sometimes I get into a situation which could be a bit sticky, and I just know that he's there. I just think, am I doing what I'm supposed to be doing? Because if I'm not, I'm out of here. But as long as I think I'm doing what I'm supposed to be, fine. Now, moving along, as an independent visitor in the Mandurah prison, I write reports up. I've just resigned actually. I write reports, I interview the staff, the people incarcerated there, inspect all the facilities, and then write my reports, which eventually gets supposed to get through to Parliament. But I'm sure it doesn't, because nothing changes. So in playing golf one day in Bridgetown, where we lived, my partner said to me, he was part of the theatre down there, and he said, Tony, you wouldn't believe it. He said, we just got a grant for $10,000 to buy material, which we have, to do repairs on the theatre. And, but we haven't got any money to get it done. And I said, goodness me, how about that? And hit the ball again. And then I thought, I know somebody that can. So I said to him, look, I know some guys that could probably do it for nothing. He said, oh yeah. Oh, terrific. And I talked about it, and I talked it up a bit. And he said, how are the guys? And I said, prisoners from Mandurah. Oh my God. The black dot was up. And anyway, I said, just kept on going and told him what they did in the community, and he thought, oh yeah. I said, I'll make a presentation to your board if you like, and so they did. They let me do that. And I didn't say anything about the prisoners first. I went through this whole same process. And somebody said, who are the guys? And when I told them, the old black top was up again. And anyway, I kept on talking, and they heard the good things that were going to happen. So finally I said, well, I'll put it to the vote now, do you want them or not? And they said, yes, of course. I said, okay. And as if I owned these guys, I said, I won't let them come unless you make them feel welcome, you work alongside them, feed them, and eat with them. And they said, yes, of course. Well, I turned up the first day when they're welcome. And the lady chairman, she was greeting them at the front door. And honestly, it was, I don't blame her, she's a dear friend of mine too. She, welcome. Yes, get right through. You know, don't touch me, you've got leprosy, a double dose of COVID, and how come you haven't got a mask on? You know, that sort of stuff. It was awful. That was on the Monday. By the Friday, it was, oh, g'day John, and a big hug and a kiss. And Fred and Charlie, you know, come in. And everybody was happy to see them. This lady was going down to the IGA each day and buying a heap of food, and this woman at the checkout said, Shirley, you're buying a lot of food, what are you doing? And she said, well, and she started talking about her boys and the wonderful things they did. And she said, the checkout woman said, well look, when you come through tomorrow, come through my checkout. So she did. And out came a very large tray of muffins. And she said, give this to your boys. And this sort of thing was going on, you know, all the time. And I thought, let's spread this. So I went out and got the churches involved. The Anglican Church, talked to the guys down there, and they said, yeah, look, one of them said, look, we can teach them how to do a great rock embankment and get a parking area up there. And a friend of mine, a neighbour, was into earth moving, and he voluntarily brought down one of his machines and brought in all the dirt so that these guys would build the rocks up. And whilst they were there, one of the guys, CJ, incidentally, by the time they got to there, their reputation was beginning to go out through the town. But CJ is sitting on the fence doing some pruning the trees, because they did gardening as well. So he's sitting up there pruning, and the old lady next door came up and she said, oh, that's a wonderful job you're doing there, man. Can you give me a wave and I've got 5 minutes? Anyway, yes, she said, oh, I need a tree pruned. Do you reckon you could prune mine? And of course they're not allowed to go onto private property, so he couldn't do it. But about 5 or 10 minutes later, there was this terrible accident. He fell off the fence into her place. And he had his secretaries and managed to prune the tree as he went past. And went off. And anyway, later in the morning, I was standing up at the top and watching. Because every time I came to town, I'd spend time with them. And I was standing with the officer, and here's this guy sitting down the bottom end of the rockery, and this old lady's feeding him lollies. And it was like grandma talking to grandson, and there was love.
Yeah.
And so it was fantastic to see. And then the other churches, the same things were going on, you know, that all this sort of stuff was happening. They got involved with, I got them involved with the Shire, and I was on a committee that was going to be looking at what they're going to do with the cemetery. Well, I got the boys involved up there, and the CWA, they fed them. And so they'd knock off for lunch, come downtown into the CWA rooms, and I'd meet them there. And on the second occasion when I was there, the ladies were standing back and looking at them as if they were relatives, friends, beautiful boys. And they were so pleased to be able to do it. And then the boys, of course, they did some jobs for the CWA. And the Catholic Church got involved. And when these guys hit the gardens, there was a big convent and a church nearby. When they hit the gardens, they just go straight through, heap the stuff up the bank. They'd only be there for a morning in a place that just looks prim. They laid carpet in the church. They've done all sorts of things. They went up to the United Church, they did the same sorts of things. Everything was there. A couple of my girlfriends down there, don't tell my wife, we're all best friends. These girls, these women there, they could see what was going on and they thought we have to do something special. So we got together, or they got together, and they had a luncheon at the end of the year to say thank you. And then we were able to present certificates of thanks to the boys and to the prison itself. During the course of all this, people were ringing me and saying, "Oh, Tony, do you think the prisoners could come and do this, or prisoners go and do that?" And I'd send out an application form, or my wife would. And I thought, prisoners, God, I hate that word. So I thought, yes, right. I said, "Oh, you mean the college boys?" So we started calling them the college boys. And so I get phone calls. "Oh, Tony, could the college boys do this, do you think? Or do you think they'd be able to do that?" You know, whatever. College boys is a big thing. One day, a chap came up to me and he says, "Oh, Tony," he said, "these college boys," he said, "where do they come from?" And I said, "The Bunbury Regional." I didn't say Bunbury Regional Prison, I just said Bunbury Regional. They put the college in mind. But the attitude around town was so good. On occasions, you know, when there was something happening or food going on, there'd be cakes given. You know, "Take these home, boys. You know, do this." And on a number of occasions, one particular occasion I can remember, a lady yelled out to the officer, "Steve," because by this time nearly everybody knew who these guys were and who the officer was. "Steve, wait a minute." And this lady ran into, they were all in the truck ready to go and come home. She ran into RGA and came up with a great big box of ice creams and said, "I thought you boys might like these on the way home." These sorts of things happen regularly. They were doing some work on the street and people would spot them and think, "Oh gosh, it's a bit warm out there." And they'd race in and get some ice creams, and particularly ice creams, bring it out and give them to them. So that was great. I belonged to the walking group down there, and one day we were out and I said, "The group are working in the Boy Scouts department hall. What about we take some morning tea up and buy some stuff and take up?" Well, one guy was very upset because he couldn't come. He gave me $10 and said, "Tony, can you buy some drinks?" Well, between us all, we took a load of drinks and cakes and stuff like that. We went up, and there was a replacement officer in charge of it, and all this stuff starts coming in. And he said to me, "Tony," he said, "it's no wonder that these guys love coming to Bridgetown." And he said, "This is in January, when the heat is extraordinary. He said, we've been working out in the heat in Bunbury for the Shire, and they didn't even bring us a glass of water. It was terrible." So these sorts of things happen. On one occasion, they were working at the Uniting Church. I went to see them, as my usual thing, practice. And I parked my vehicle on a rise, which is how things work. And down there it's very hard ground and clay and rocks and things like that. So I got out of my vehicle, began to walk down the slope, and both my feet slid out from under me, you know, just like that, and they're up like this. And the first part of me that hit the ground was my head, bang, which knocked me sillier than usual. And I was just laying there, and I could hear, but trying to shake myself together. And all I could hear was, "Tony, mate, Tony, are you okay, mate?" And Shorty, one of the guys, he came running over with two other guys. Well, when I sort of woke up to what was going on, Shorty had his hand, one hand under my head, protecting it from the hard ground, and the other one he was brushing my face and my forehead, saying, "Are you okay, Tony? Are you all right?" Love was coming. And the other two guys, big fellas, they had an arm each, and they were, just stroking me and, talking to me quietly. And then, I got to the point where I could get up, and they said, I said, "I'll get up." Well, I didn't get up. They just lifted me straight up, took me by the arms, and led me across to the hall where we had a cup of tea and sat down and talked about, what was going on. Fantastic. On the way across, do you remember upstairs, they're always having a trick, using me as a bit of a trick. I looked up and I said, "Well, look, it really didn't hurt. The bang on the head didn't hurt. But thank you for opening a door for these guys to show their care, compassion and love." And I said, "And also, thank you for letting me receive their love." Love is very important. And so that was that. There was an occasion where these chaps were coming home from Bridgetown back to Mandurah, and a woman was coming towards them in her motor car and had a medical episode, and she crossed the double line and was coming at them. The officer swung the vehicle so they'd miss her, but she hit the trailer, their big threatening work trailer, wrote that off, wrote her car off, and she was in a very bad way. And what happened? The guys jumped out, got her safe, helped her to stay alive until the helicopter came to pick her up. So then that was fine. She went to the hospital. She found out that who had been looking after her and probably saved her life while she wrote letters to the prison boys, and they started coming back and forth. The guys who live on a pittance for funding, they put together all their pocket money and bought a great big heap of flowers to send to her. Love is being shown both ways. The doors were open. And if we look at it that way, we will be a much healthier community, and we'll be healthy in ourselves. We can carry, people upset us, and we can carry a grudge. We call it pain. They hurt me. A good example, I think, is, we can carry it for a long time and we can be hurting. A friend of mine was giving a retreat at a convent, and he was talking about forgiveness and love. And anyway, this old nun came up and he said, "Father," she said, "I had a real problem." She said, I just can't stand Sister Mary." And he said, "Oh, why?" "Oh, she just upset me so much. I just can't stand her, and I won't talk to her, but I need to forgive her." And so Father said, "And this has been hurting you. Oh, I've been hurt for many years now." And so he said, "What exactly did she do?" Well, he said, she said, I don't really remember. It was so many years ago. But she carried that pain instead of pushing it away. And often we do the same thing. And all of us have a little white dot or black dot on us, but we also have Christ inside. we also have the strength of forgiveness. And I ask that we can do that to the prisoners and to each other, and give each other the love that we need. Amen.
Heavenly Father, help us to love and help us to be prepared to receive love to everyone around us. Now may the grace of the Lord Jesus Christ, the love of God and the communion of the Holy Ghost go with us now and always. Amen.